The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming.
That's right.
That's what we
Who
should
cares if
be
we
talking
kidnapped
about.
their children? What does it matter? Who cares if we kidnapped them? The Dow is up. Who cares if we snatched your kids and took them to an island? So what? We're part of an ancient blood cult. The Dow is up. You know what the NASDAQ's doing? The blue chips? The S&P 500? Why don't you shut your mouth about the kids that we abducted and sacrificed?
Hello, folks. Welcome back to another episode of SHU Outdoors. I'm your host. My name is Mick, and today we're going to do a deep dive on a video that I just found extremely interesting. Yes, this is a prison genre-related show, and we talk about a lot of prison-related topics. But honestly, I don't want to be the show that just talks about I had an argument over using the phone, or a guy didn't pay me a crackhead soup and a horrible incident happened. I want the show to be a little bigger than that, and I want to show how world events and how the elite think of us leads to mass incarceration. Do a little deeper dive, and today that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a deep dive on a phenomenal video. I know that you'll enjoy it if you just give it the opportunity. Let's listen to it together, and we'll pause periodically, and I'll give you my 2 cents worth on the topic, but let's go ahead and get into it.
Tim Dillon really talking for most Americans when we watched this disaster of an presentation, if that's the right word we could use for Pam Bondi last week, seemed to talk about anything except why she was actually there. And we're going to get to a lot of that today. We're very grateful to have Robert Barnes back with us today, constitutional lawyer at Barnes Law. But I want to talk about some other things first. But man, just off the top there was a lot of frustration by listening to her just badger people last week and not talk about why she's there. What did you make of that?
It was the most disastrous public performance by an attorney general in American history. And it will be memed into history. 20 years from now, somebody will say as a joke, why are you complaining? The Dow's at 50,000. I mean, it is permanently part of our culture now. They even created, like, what Pam Bondi would be like as a waitress. And it was one of the funniest skits out there. She's memed herself into history, and not in a good way.
Not in a good way at all.
What is Todd Blanche's most famous quote now? It's not a crime to party with Epstein. These are the most incompetent rubes known to man. It's one thing to be corrupt deep state complicit parties, like both Bondi and Blanche are. It's quite another to be this level of stupid. As I say, I don't mind criminals, I don't mind stupid, but you put them together, and that's how you get crazy world wars and unnecessary scandals like this one.
And what do you think was what could have been in the thought process? I know we're going to talk about this in more detail here in a minute, but that's the thing that puzzled me the most.
Why are you asking me all these questions about the Epstein files?
Or
the stock market's booming.
What did they think that this was going to accomplish to try and do this? Because it couldn't have been by mistake. I mean, it clearly was a plan. But towards what end? What do you think the objective was?
So my understanding is basically back in the late spring, early summer, Pam Bondi cut a deal with the deep state writ large. Said, we won't prosecute anybody serious or significant or substantial, or we'll slow walk any case that comes out that gets referred to us related to Russiagate, related to COVID, related to J6, related to any of those deep state corruption scandals, the lawfare that took place under the Biden administration. And in exchange, you, the Democratic Party elites, you, a lot of the deep state allies in the throughout the national security establishment, you will turn a blind eye.
And you know what? Where is Nancy Pelosi? Where is AOC? Where is Chucky Schumer? Where are these people? They should be on TV every day railing against Donald Trump. Not only is he a Republican, they're Democrats, but what he's doing is just completely moronic. And these people can't be found anywhere. Not on TV, nothing. You know why? Because they are part of the problem, definitely not a part of the solution.
Turning the Justice Department into a cash register for our lobbyist pals and allies. The lobbyist pals of Susie Wiles, I like to call her Swampy Susie, Pam Bondi got this reputation all the way back to when she was a Florida Attorney General, when she covered up Epstein the first time, known as Pay for Play Pam.
Yeah, you remember that. You know, Epstein got charged with SA on minors down here in Florida about 20 years or so ago. And he ended up getting 6 months probation or 6 months house arrest. You know who the Attorney General was for the state of Florida at that time? That's right, Pam Bondi. And it seems as if somebody recommended her or she got picked or whatever to be the Attorney General during this whole Epstein debacle. So, you start connecting dots, If there's smoke, there's fire usually.
Todd Blanche, I like to call him Todd Blanche Dubois, from the Sovereign District of New York, came up, tutored under one of the most corrupt divisions of our Justice Department in the last quarter century. So I think that's what they did, and they snookered Trump into covering it up, saying, we'll take something that could otherwise exonerate Trump and incriminate a lot of his enemies, more of his adversaries than his allies. It would incriminate. It would incriminate some of the Israel First donors, but not a lot of other people in his lifelong circles. And we'll convince him to incriminate himself and de facto exonerate everybody else. And then we'll convince him that, the problem, the files have you all over it, Mr. President. They just lied to him left and right about what was in the files. And he's still going along with this scam and scheme, even though now they're calling him the Epstein administration, the defender and protector of the Epstein class. He's flipping off blue-collar workers because they're screaming at him, pedo protector. He's unnecessary. He was enraged this whole weekend about this. Well, the easy solution, Mr. President, fire Pam Bondi, fire Todd Blanche, fire Kash Patel, put real people in there, put Tom Fitton in charge of transparency over the Epstein files, put some real people, General Flynn back in to maybe help investigate the Epstein files for further prosecution. Put Tulsi Gabbard in charge of the Epstein files. She'll document what is really going on, the scale and scope of global corruption, and how anti-human these elite power brokers truly are. Human trafficking, arms running. But basically, Epstein was your purveyor and provider of the most evil, sick stuff in Satan's shop as you could get. This exposes all of the problematic people and participants that populist rebellions across the Western world have wanted to dethrone. Use the Epstein files to do so. He still has a chance to do so, but he's only going to be able to do so if he turns back to his voters' wife.
He's not going to turn back. He's too committed at this point. All right? He has somehow convinced himself that he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. All right? And I personally think the reason why he was elected president wasn't necessarily because everybody that voted for him really agreed with everything he stood for. I think he ran against a horrible candidate. And not for nothing, when he came over that stage covered in blood after that horrible incident and held his arm up, that was kind of like a common vote for me type of moment. And like I said, he was just running against a really bad candidate, in my experience, in my opinion. It has nothing to do with her race or gender, even though I know some people will automatically go to that. I just didn't like the lady, and that's just the way it was, Other people probably felt different. That's fine. But he can't turn back. He's too committed. Everybody around him that is giving him information is bought and paid for by the Zionist lobby. They're all bought and paid for. So all the information he's getting is actually information that's going against his common sense, but he feels obligated to believe it because these Zionist lobbyists gave him hundreds of millions of dollars for his re-election campaign, just like they do almost every candidate in Washington, D.C. The American people's government, it doesn't work in our interest, it works in foreign government's interest. Iran has never attacked us one time. Never. Not once, ever, never. Now, yeah, they've supported quote-unquote insurgents. But think about it. How would you feel about a country if they had tried to take out the American president a number of times, senators, congressmen, and that country yelled, death to this, death to that. I mean, wouldn't you feel some kind of way about them? Iran's never did nothing to me, man. All right? And they've never attacked the United States. They got a right not to like the United States if they don't want to. You know, just like I got a right to not like other countries if I don't want to. That don't give me the right to go invade them.
And abandons his donor mistress. And right now, Bondi and Patel was Bongino, and Blanche are basically running circles around him. They even fired Gail Slater, the last populist reformer in the entire Justice Department, so that now they can shake down big corporations to allow mergers to go through, to allow monopolies to go unaccosted, and like Live Nation and Ticketmaster, whose stock went through the roof as soon as they found out Gail Slater was fired. So it's just, they have basically sold the Justice Department to a bunch of corrupt lobbyists the way Trump has sold his administration to a bunch of corrupt donors.
Well,
true story.
That's a heck of an intro here we got. I'm going to circle back and hit all that stuff on detail because that's incredibly fascinating, if not discouraging. But I want to stick on the international level first because there's some legal issues that need to be talked about, which could potentially, and hard to believe, could actually dwarf this if things go sideways, especially in regard to the Iran situation. Now, I want to first of all play this soundbite here that President Trump was asked yesterday, is regime change in Iran actually an objective?
So far, they do a lot of talking and no action. They've already started.
You thought regime change in Iran?
Well, it seems like that would be the best thing that could happen. For 47 years, they've been talking and talking and talking. In the meantime, we've lost a lot of lives while they talk, and legs blown off, arms blown off, faces blown off. It's been going on for a long time, so let's see what happens.
And actually, let me kind of pair that off with one video from, and I hate to do this to you, Lindsey Graham was in.
What a loser,
he was
man.
Talking about how, listen, we just need to go after these guys.
Not for nothing, man. I'm born and raised in South Carolina. It's been decades since I've lived there, but he's from South Carolina, and I can tell you what, he's not the best native son that ever come out of South Carolina. This guy is just pure, my humble opinion, pure tea, no good. That goes for Nikki Haley and all those South Carolina politicians. They're all bought and paid for. They'll take any kind of kickback, scheme, scam they can take from anybody. I was born and raised there. I know exactly what the state's all about, man. It's that kind of state where the good old boys and good old girls, not just good old boys and girls routinely run scams on their own citizens, take kickbacks. They're just a bad lot of politicians, the Democrats and the Republicans. You know, and on a side note, a lot of people, you know, railed that New York City had elected a communist or a socialist mayor or whatever, and that was part of the story. But the much bigger story was that they did not elect an establishment Democrat or Republican. That was the much bigger story that kind of like flew under, you know, the radar. But the much bigger story was that a Democrat or a Republican that was from the establishment that was well-financed didn't win. Now, who knows how this guy ultimately worked out? But that was the real message. We're tired of both of you. We're tired of the two established parties BS, okay? 90% of them, in my opinion, are bought and paid for. They vote how they get told to vote. And they don't care if they get a run out of office after 4 years or 8 years or 12 years or whatever as a congressman or a senator, you know, because they're allowed to do all kind of insider trading. So they go there with $10,000, they play the game, they vote how they get told to vote, and they leave with $50 or $100 million in their bank account. And, you know, we don't seem to have a problem with it as American citizens because we allow it to keep happening.
And don't even worry about the rule of law.
I think you do go after the oppressors. Kill the ones who kill the people. Their economy is in tatters. They've been beaten pretty badly. They're as weak as they can be, but they're still dangerous. Compare that to doing nothing. So these are your choices. You either execute a plan using military capability of the United States with Israel, working with people on the ground to bring the Ayatollah's regime down.
Notice how I didn't call him a
or
homeboy.
You do nothing but have talked.
Yeah, we're from born and raised in the same state, but he ain't my
When
homeboy.
this is all over, it will be a disaster of generational proportions. He stood down the West. He did it yet again. And all the people who are on the fence will slowly be rounded up and killed over the coming years in Iran.
So both what President Trump suggested and what Lindsey Graham is begging for, which is a regime change war. Now, I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm not a lawyer, an expert like you are, which is why I'm so grateful to have you on today. But just as a common person who read the Constitution, especially Articles 1 and 2, the 1973 War Powers.
And that's something else I got to insert here. The reason why when you read the Constitution, I've read it, and when you read it, it's not a document that's written so you have to be a PhD scholar to understand. It's a document, yes, it does use certain sophisticated words, but for the most part, it is a document that the average common man at that time when it was written with an 8th, 10th grade education could read and understand. Now you got to be a constitutional scholar to read and understand your own United States Constitution. That's a huge red flag, and it's a big problem. The Constitution is not complicated. Any high school kid can get a copy, can read it, and understand more or less what it says. There may be certain passages you got to think a little bit about or go to look up certain definitions. What does this word mean or that word mean? But the Constitution itself is relatively pretty straight up. There's not a lot of misunderstandings. The elite, the ruling class, has went out of their way to make it as confusing and misunderstood as humanly possible. I strongly encourage all of you to go get a copy of the United States Constitution and read it.
To be specific, I look at that, and it's not that long. It's a pretty short law. But when you see that there are only 3 opportunities that the commander-in-chief can use the armed forces. 1 is the declaration of war by the Congress. 2 is specific statutory authorization by the Congress ahead of time. Or 3, we've been attacked. Since none of those cases are at play here, Iran hasn't attacked us. They're not threatening to attack us. They pose no threat to us. So it seems to me that it would be a direct violation of the Constitution and the U.S. law, not to mention international law, for us to take this action. Am I missing something?
No, there's no legal justification or constitutional justification for this war. Iran is not threatening the United States of America. Iran is not threatening the United States of America. There is no imminent threat. So the same self-defense principles that apply for individuals, my view, is always should be applied both constitutionally and in terms of international customs practices and laws and the interpretation of various conventions.
Iran hasn't threatened us one time.
Signatory to.
They ain't got no ships off of our coast.
Remain the supreme law of the land.
Put strikes on our country.
The
We're the aggressor. We're the ones over there, not me.
So we've signed
my government, not me. I'm not over there, and I'm not going over there.
So in order for the president to have a justification to do so, you need it to not have to go to Congress. You need an imminent risk to the American population and people that can only be proportionately met by the military action being recommended. There is no imminent risk from Iran to the United States of America, and a regime change war would not be proportionate to that risk anyway. Indeed, you would increase the risk of Iranian attacks on the United States if you were to actually succeed in regime change, because you're going to be unleashing a lot of very dangerous forces in Iran, whether it's the MEK, whether it's the Shah's allies, whether it's the Sunni terror groups in the northwest. I mean, you've got, the Kurds might be allied. Who knows how long they'll stay allied after they just got abandoned again in Syria. It's what the U.S. does. Come in, we'll help you. We screwed you again. I don't know how they can have any confidence in that. And then you got the Turks that don't want any of that to happen.
They don't seem like they're very smart because they keep doing it in both Kurdistan.
He doesn't want to stop with Iran. He wants Turkey next.
I ain't going over there
neither. He
neither.
wants to go at the Turk. I mean, I kid you not. That discussion happened in the White House last week. Like, hey, we got to start looking at a plan. The rest of Greater Israel includes part of Jordan, part of Egypt, part of Turkey. I mean, that's how not because they're.
Let me tell you what's happening here. if Trump makes the mistake of attacking Iran, what's going to happen is one of them aircraft carriers is going to get sunk right out there in the middle of the Indian Ocean or wherever it's sitting. And when that happens, Trump and his allies are going to say, well, Lindsey Graham, we got to send troops on the ground. And when you send those troops on the ground, they're going to be hit because now they're going to get surrounded and you ain't going to be able to get them out. You're going to have to send more in. And you're going to have to send more in. And Iran's going to keep firing those missiles on anything that moves in the ocean. It's going to destroy all the oil wells in all the Middle Eastern countries that host U.S. bases. And that's a significant number. It's going to eliminate or do a lot of damage to every one of those bases. And it is on. You see, Turkey knows that they're next on the list. So they've actually joined forces with Iran. I bet you $1,000 to a piece of chewed bubble gum they have. And China and Russia is going to support, and North Korea might send troops to Iran to help if it comes to that. Because what a lot of people don't understand, America committed in Ukraine. And by doing that, yeah, you cause Russia a lot of pain and suffering, but you haven't even got close to breaking them. In fact, they're probably more stronger now, militarily at least, than they have been in any point in the last 300 or 400 years. And furthermore, you drained a whole lot of your resources, your missiles, your tanks, all the things that you had available in the Iraq war. You've done drained that down a whole lot. America is going to attack Iran. I believe that. I could be wrong. Hope I am. But if I'm not, they're going to attack. And when they attack, it's going to go sideways. All right? This is the mighty Persian Empire. Okay? It's not Iran. It's not Syria. That was all those countries, with the exception of maybe Iran, but even historically, all those countries have always been somewhat proxies of Iran. It's the motherland right there in the Middle East. Not Israel, Iran. Why do you think they've never ran down on them before? If they could have toppled them, they would have did that years ago. No. They're not nothing to take lightly. They have a very capable military, a tremendous amount of military assets, i.e. missiles, etc., drones, and they've accumulated a lot of knowledge from the Russians. They've been providing them with drones, I'm sure, in exchange for money and goods and information, how they operate in the field, and they've continued to improve them. So if Trump and his Minister of War and all the hoorah boys run down on them, I think you're going to get a black eye and a bloody nose. And I think it's going to turn out to be that's where the world war is going to happen. If you read the Bible, and I'm not a Bible thumper or anything like that, but just for historical reasons, look up in Revelation. It says the great armies of the East and the great armies of the West will meet in the Middle East in the end of times. This is predicted. So, who knows if this specific incident will take it there. But, look where it's going. Let's go ahead on and get back into it.
Happy with how the Turks are refusing to let them conquer Syria and just have the whole southern part of Syria, which is what that whole backstory is going on there. So they are intending, by the way, but a lot of Americans don't know this. Americans overwhelmingly oppose this. This politically is going to be disastrous. If this is what I call a rare situation of lose-lose, right? If you win by displacing and getting regime change, then you probably really lose because you have a 90 million population country with a bunch of people that will now hate the United States of America, with a bunch of Shia people that will now hate across the religious world who may engage in their own rebellion, whether it's, you can look at Alistair Crook, who's been on your show, and others talking about this, risk to Bahrain, risk to Iraq, risk to risk to Saudi Arabia, the risk to the whole region. I mean, it could be completely destabilized and fall apart, not just from Iran attacks on U.S. military bases and oil facilities in those regions, but because of domestic Shia rebellions that may take place. So if we actually succeed in regime change, we probably have a bigger disaster on our hands than if we just go in and fail and lose and have to tuck tail. How is it we're going to beat the Iranians when we couldn't even beat the Houthi. Colonel McGregor has nailed this point repeatedly. It's like, I'm sorry, there's no military tactical analysis that says that's a probable event to occur. But the president
these people are liars. All your politicians are liars.
There, and he's talking
90+% of them are bought and paid for.
Of boots on the ground. That they are anticipating more than 10,000 U.S. soldier casualties in their analysis, and they're still willing to go forward with it. It's not clear Israel can survive, which creates a real nuclear escalatory risk.
Because this time Iran's going to really give them the business.
Like, Bloomberg's a geopolitical economics analysis.
And one more point I want to make here, and I'm going to let this guy get right back into it. We know for a fact that Iran has enriched uranium. Okay, we know that for a fact. We also know for a fact that Pakistan is a nuclear-armed Islamic country. For people who don't know geography, Pakistan is next-door neighbors with Iran. All right, they're both, Islamic type, countries. That's a fact. You don't, quote unquote, need a nuclear bomb to render a country uninhabitable. All you got to do is put radioactive material on the end of a bomb and just send it over there. You send about 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 of them over there. Israel will be contaminated. You won't be able to live on the land no more. Okay, so for all practical purposes, they very well may have a few nuclear weapons on the down low no one knows about. That's quite possible. Don't fool yourself into think the U.S. government can see 500 feet under solid rock and know exactly what's going on in this little tunnel. Okay, that's not, they can see a lot, but they can't see that. And even if they don't have, quote unquote, a nuclear weapon, they can surely improvise something that'll be just about as good. All right. So a lot of people don't think about all the angles, but that's an angle you need to keep in mind and think about. And honestly, Iran is on its ground. It's holding its ground. It's a population of over 90 million people. They have an excellent army. They're prepared. They've been preparing for war for the last 40 years with the United States and Israel. This didn't just happen. We got to beef with the United States or Israel. I mean, this has been going on for a long time. They're prepared. I predict Trump's going to go in and get a bloody nose and a black eye, and then he's going to feel committed to go deeper in. And when you start putting these troops on the ground in Iran, okay, it's not like an open desert. There's a whole bunch of mountains, very similar to Afghanistan in certain areas of the country. And those soldiers and those troops are going to meet heavy resistance. And you're going to have to put more in to reinforce them. And you're going to come to the realization you can't get them back out. Okay, you're going to get stuck. It's going to be worse than Vietnam. It's going to destroy President Trump's presidency, which is exactly what he deserved. Because he went in there, he got voted in overwhelmingly to do X, Y, and Z. And he went exactly against most of the things he said he was going to do. I don't think most Americans have a problem with you rounding up criminal, illegal immigrants and sending them back where they came from. But I don't think most Americans support old grandmother that's been here for 40 years and has a huge family and doesn't even know anything about Mexico anymore. She's been here, kind of questionable status, but the government's let her stay here because she was cleaning hotel rooms and whatnot. And all of a sudden she's old with a bunch of kids, and U.S. ground her up and rough her up and deport her. I think a lot of Americans probably ain't really cool with that, So let's get back into it.
But his point was but he has to evaluate the risk of conflict as figuring out geopolitics and the oil economy. Because if they shut down the Straits of Hormuz, the oil price could double or even triple overnight. So that you've got all of those risks and they're planning on doing it if we have any extended conflict. And Trump has talked himself into this by letting Bibi Netanyahu and his donor class and his minders. He's letting the Epstein class run his administration. And that's who these people are. They're the Epstein class. That's why he was really mad all weekend about being called the Epstein administration. Well, just don't be the Epstein administration.
Just don't be the Epstein administration.
And that means you don't
Simple
go
enough.
and fight regime change wars that you promised the American people for more than a decade you wouldn't do. And this would make Iraq, Libya, and Syria look like small change by comparison.
Yeah.
That's how the risk is on this. The risk is off the charts. A real win for the U.S. would be if we lose quickly and they go home. That would be the best. That's not your ideal case scenario. Imagine Trump's ego, how humiliating that's going to be for him. to get embarrassed by the likes of Iran. Iran is not about ready to collapse. There wasn't a bunch of mass executions.
Ego is a phenomenal thing, right up to the point where it becomes counterproductive. And at this point, Trump's ego has become counterproductive. And not only is it going to affect his presidency, it's going to affect you and my lifestyles dramatically, because when the price of fuel goes up, everything that fuel goes into helping create, move, transport, etc., goes right up with it. But you know what else ain't going to go up? You'll pay. In fact, you might even lose your job. This is what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now. And I tell you what, if our country, I would rather the government just fall apart than be run by cannibalistic, SA types. That's the way I feel about it. I'd rather, and I consider myself a loyal, patriotic American in my own weird way. I tell you what, if another country come over here trying to invade my country, yeah, I'd take a pot shot at them every time I got a chance. Make no diggity, no doubt about it. All right, so I understand how another country feels when we go over there unprovoked because we're being do boys from, our politicians are bought and paid for. Okay, and it's a bad scene, man. Bad scene. Let's go ahead and get back into it.
Of protesters. Those were a bunch of terror BLM-style groups that went out and committed violence in a regime change domestic effort, and it failed. And so the idea that now we're going to get regime change, the Persian people and culture are very proud. They're going to rally around the flag. They're already rallying around the flag. So this has disaster written all over it. The vice president knows it has disaster written all over it. But the Tulsi Gabbard has been the only reason we haven't gone to war yet in Iran. It's because Gabbard keeps telling him the regime won't collapse and Israel cannot survive more than 2 weeks of ballistic missiles because they won't be able to hold up their water and energy supply, their water sanitation plants. And they were almost offline last time. They will be offline this time because Iran plans on being much more aggressive and much more sophisticated. And now they got the help of the Chinese. They got the help of the Russians, who aren't going to let Iran fall and be a complete disaster for their regional.
This is where the BRICS and that whole axis intends to hold the United States and break them. Right there in Iran. That's the plan. If Trump makes the mistake of going into Iran, and don't misunderstand me, man, I'm not saying the American military is not an awesome force. Hey, let me tell you something. My grandfather fought in 2 wars. World War II, got recalled in Korea, had 12 kids. My father fought in Vietnam, okay? My stepfather is buried in Arlington National Cemetery as a Master Chief in the United States Navy. So I'm a stone cold patriot. But just because I'm a stone cold patriot don't mean I'm going to co-sign a bunch of creeps who are trying to send my neighbors and my kinfolk over there to fight some war that ain't necessary and not only spill a lot of decent human blood that don't deserve to be spilled, but to put my people in harm's way because they'll facilitate a war because they're getting all kind of kickbacks and all whatever's going on up there and the sick shit's going on up there on Capitol Hill. All right? If that is the government and that's what's happening right now in the United States government, and that's the type of folks who's running it, and I believe that they are, and I'm not saying everybody in D.C. is like that, but a cabal basically runs a lot of the world's governments. Just look at what's going on, man. I mean, I don't claim to know everything about everything that's going on in the world, but I'm a reasonably intelligent person, and I can look around and see, yeah, this is exactly what's happening. It's a blood cult. The cult of Baal, all that stuff, it's in the Bible. It's documented throughout history. This is a blood cult. If you read the Bible, you'll see where the certain tribes back in the Bible, the Jews, I'm just going to call it the way I said. They built this huge statue with the hands out, and they built fires under each hand, and they throw their babies in there and sacrifice them to these dark gods. All right, that's documented in the Holy Bible that the Israelites were very instrumental in crafting. It's a deep thought, right?
Economic and geopolitical interest as the IN BRICS. So, I mean, to a degree, India was supposed to be the eye, but increasingly Iran is. So, this says all Trump has to do is cut an enhanced, improved version of the JCPOA. That's right on the table as we speak. It's been on the table all year.
Yeah, that's the issue. Say, okay, just don't explode above 60%.
No, there's the reason.
Don't make a bomb, and we won't mess with you no more.
Nuclear weapons, cut the deal. End of story. Go
cut
home.
the deal. Go
end
home.
The sanctions. End being Israel, Bibi's little bitch throughout the world, and restore your focus to the
Can't
American
do that
people,
because our
politicians
are bought and paid for. We need to run them all out of office.
He's already
let it fall if need be. Run them all out of office and put good people in there.
To go with the Epstein files,
if that's even possible, I don't even know if it's possible.
With an
it might be
doomed.
doomed.
Creating jobs, as the last report showed. Trump could get into the 20s, low 30s. You're talking George W. Bush 07 territory. You're talking about Nixon at the peak of Watergate territory. And he may.
That's where he needs to be. All right. I tell you what. I was a little bit fooled. I was never no hardcore Trumpinite, but I was a little bit fooled by the guy to a degree. I'm going to admit that, okay? I didn't vote in this last election or for him the first time. One thing that made me like him just a little bit in his first administration, he is the only president that ever signed laws where federal prisoners could earn extra good time for behaving and taking programs and stuff like that. And by the time it made it through Congress, it was really watered down to what his actual intent was. So I was saying I was in federal prison at the time, and I was feeling that, you know. So that kind of made me say, okay, he's still wild, man, but maybe he's got a little redeeming factor. And when he got out of office and the Capitol riots and all that happened, and then they spent all that time trying to indict him and jail him and all that. I thought that was a little overboard. I'm not saying he's not a criminal or a creep. I feel totally different about him now. I'm talking about the way I felt about him then. All right? And they were trying to jail him, and everybody was slandering him, and then he ran again, and that moment when he come off the stage covered with blood, holding his hand up, you know, I think he had quite a few pivotal moments, you know, where I wasn't 100% for him. I knew he was weird and wild, but I was like, well, what's the alternative? This lady who didn't even go through a primary, basically Joe Biden appointed her as the nominee. So, and who knows? But I think that's the reason why a lot of American people ended up voting for Trump. And they probably hoped that he would do what he said he was going to do. Since he's been in office, we've kidnapped leaders from around the country. We've had several conflicts. Now we've bombed Iran one time already. Now we're ready to go back in again and basically destroy it because they're going to close down the Straits of Hormuz. Your oil is going to triple or quadruple in price. That's going to happen, and everything else in the economy is going to go into freeze fall. Who knows? But that's just a probability.
Even worse than there. And you look at young voters, they've completely flipped on it. And the new MAGA voters are abandoning him in mass because they want to no more endless wars, no more focus on foreign aid, no more focus on foreign policy, no more cover-up of corruption of pedophile elites. And yet he's doing all of those things. And he's doing these things by people who do not have his best interest at heart, who have their best interest at heart. And if he returns, dump the mistress of the donors and remarry the voters who's always been his only loyal wife in the last decade plus he's been in politics.
Well, that's certainly the case. That's a really good way to wrap that up. But it just puzzles me a number of things. Number one, why Trump would go down the path of not doing what he promised to do in the campaign about the Epstein files. If he's not in them, if he actually didn't do anything, then he would have had no motivation.
This guy's going to answer the question beautifully.
Put them out there and bring people to justice on that. More on that in a second, but I want to stick on this topic you just raised here because it's very alarming. We had, I think the number was about 4,400 casualties in all of the years of the Iraq War. 4,400 in all of them. If we go and take this action here, my assessment is, I haven't been to a number of these bases up in this region here during my 4 combat deployments. I can tell you that the air defense we have is less good than what Israel has in its multi-layered air defense capacity.
Colonel Daniel Davis.
The Iron Dome, the David Sling, the THAAD system, the Patriots, all that stuff together. We don't have as good of that in many of these bases you see on the screen right there. And if they decide to attack and they're more aggressive, as you suggested that they would be, we could have 4,400 in a couple of weeks, perhaps, maybe even less than that. And if somebody is contemplating maybe there could be, even 10,000 would be doable, that is insane. And unfortunately, I hate to do this to you again, but we got to go back to a second Lindsey Graham bot because he seems to be one of the
Boo, Lindsey Graham sucks.
Can our soldiers be hit in the region? Absolutely, they could. Can Iran respond if we have an all-out attack? Absolutely, they can. I think the risk associated with that is far less than the risk associated with blinking and pulling the plug and not helping the people as you promised.
He is willing to sacrifice your sons and daughters' lives for the precious Zionist state. He is what is classically referred to as a member of ZOG, the Zionist-occupied government. Lindsey Graham is a poster child. And I don't want you to paint me into a corner if you like, but really and truly, man, I'm not biased. If you're cool, you're cool. If you're dick, you're dick, man. Okay, that's just the way I see it. And I just see who's pulling these strings behind the curtain, man. And it's obvious to a duck what's going on, Doc. This guy's willing to sacrifice my fellow American sons and daughters without a second thought. Because it's so important to him to do Bibi Netanyahu's bidding around the world. Damn it all be to hell. That's his take on it, man. This is not a good dude, man.
I mean, that is just the attempt at logic there is just blindingly bad because, look, nobody has been killed other than by indirect means. Like when the Iranians apparently were helping the Iraqi insurgency in the mid-2000s there, like we were helping the Ukrainians against Russians. But in terms of direct action, Iran has never come after the United States, and they won't unless we go after them. So when he's sitting there, this is the part that just gets my blood as a former soldier myself and who's been deployed there in that region. He's saying, I'm okay with the president taking a course of action, and I'm pushing him to do it that will get your sons and daughters, some of our members of our armed forces, people who are alive as we're making this video right now, will be dead if he gives this order. And Lindsey Graham is okay with it. Help me make sense of that.
Well, Lady Lindsey's always been the queen of the war whores and wants to invite the world into his brothel of blood. And he's always willing to sacrifice Epstein-style American lives to achieve his peculiar set of objectives. And this is the great risk the president faces. The president was more concerned, according to people I talked to, about how many deaths there would be in Israel and how many deaths there would be of U.S. soldiers than anybody else was, than Bibi Netanyahu was. Bibi was like, okay, 10,000 Israelis, no problem. Didn't care. He thought it was worth. It increases my skepticism about what really happened on October 7th. The willingness and the eagerness and the ease with which Bibi Netanyahu will sacrifice Israeli lives for his obsession with dethroning Iran and having a completely chaotic Mideast. Because then you'd have Syria in chaos, Libya in chaos, Iraq in chaos, and Iran in chaos. Who in their right mind thinks that's a good idea? Well, Lady Lindsey Graham and Bibi Netanyahu. And the question is whether the president has the courage of his convictions, of his promises to the American people to honor his original wedding oath to the MAGA voter to not do exactly these kind of wars. And we're going to find out over the next month.
If this comes to pass, what is the risk that the MAGA voters, and he's already bleeding support, as you just mentioned a second ago, but that the people who put him in vote, and many friends I know voted for him specifically because he said no more dumb wars. I voted for him in 2016 for that reason, as a matter of fact. But then I didn't vote for him the last time. I didn't vote for anybody, just to be clear, because I didn't think that he was meeting that goal. Others did, though, and they said, no, he means it this time. If he gives this one, and it's as clear as it can possibly, it's a war of choice. It's not being foisted on us, as you just articulated a second ago, that the people then could say, all right, now that you're getting Americans killed in the region, so we're going to turn against you politically. I mean, would they be able to do that? Or do you think bit, and I think some are counting on this. You get the rally around the flag thing. Well, Americans are killed, so now we have to go in even harder, and maybe now we have to go in on the ground. How do you see that playing out?
Horrible.
You look at the history of American polling on war and public opinion on war dating back to World War II. And then what you see is that usually the war is most popular at the beginning. Once it starts is when you usually get that rally around the flag effect. And then that popularity will just fade and fade and fade with time. The only American war that has had continued public opinion approval has been World War II. World War I turned unpopular. The Korean War turned unpopular. The Vietnamese War turned unpopular. Both Iraq wars turned unpopular. The Afghan War turned unpopular. The various regime change efforts around the world have ultimately proven unpopular again and again and again because Americans don't see how
they lied to you about Iran, Iraq having weapons of mass destruction. It's all been lies, man.
That's half the equation.
These people are
But
liars.
the other half
They're
of the
no
equation
good.
is America was built as a country that, as my old cousin said years ago, John Quincy Adams, America does not go abroad searching for monsters to destroy. That isn't who we are. And yet that's precisely the rationale we're hearing from this administration. When Trump ran against this for 10 plus years, said George W. Bush should have been impeached over his lies about the Iraq war.
Direct quote.
I mean, and getting us into that war, specifically an endless war in the Middle East, was the number one thing he was not supposed to do. So what will happen if he drags us into this war? And I don't think there's any scenario where it comes out looking good. But even if it was, like take Venezuela,
Iran's a completely different monster.
Last time in Iran, he was in and out. His approval still went down over time. And it's because Americans are like, why are you focusing on every nation except ours? Why is it making
Americans don't support it, and they won't support it.
Make Argentina great again.
Hey, and if you're in the military, you sign up for that, then hey, man, I understand. You got to go do what you got to go
they
do.
voted for. His last part
But
of his
don't
base
look
will
for me to
collapse.
come over there
And
and
he'll
mess
end
with
up with only
Iran.
your hardcore,
Ain't did nothing to
partisan
me.
Republican over 50 who watches Fox News every night. And that's it. And that'll be about 20-25% of the country. He will be more hated than anybody. He'll get crushed in the midterms, lose the House, lose the Senate, lose governorships, lose a bunch of other positions of power and influence. He'll be considered persona non grata in Washington with no political capital. They'll impeach him, Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, Kash Patel, Kristi Noem, who's got her own grifty Christie reputation for scandals, Corey Lewandowski. It'll be just scandal after scandal after scandal, and he'll go down as the least popular president, most disrespected and hated president in history. That's the
And the guy had it all going into office. He's completely squandered the whole football game.
Absolutely.
He was
And
half a foot away from the end zone.
About that risk, because
he allowed the ball to be ran all the way back to half an inch from the other team's end zone.
I want to play this soundbite from
the dude's no good, man.
A few days ago, because
it's just no good.
A lot of her frustration
as a fellow human being, I would never vote for that guy for dog kicking.
Is also something I think a lot of people relate to.
There is evidence, there are co-conspirators. You can't have thousands of victims and have no other accomplices except for one. And I'm on my way to the DOJ again for the second time this week. It is insulting that out of 535 members of Congress, there are 4 computers and 4 chairs in a room the size of the clock.
For them to search information. Now, here's the question for this lady and her co-Ds or co-defendants in the Congress and the Senate. Can't you just pass a law that says, no, we're going to have a room with 50 computers in it with all the latest updates constantly, and we're going to be trained exactly how to use it so we can go in there and do it ourselves, or our aides can do it? You could pass a law like that tomorrow. So instead of complaining about it, lady, why don't you do what your constituents sent you to Washington, D.C. to do? Okay, which was to challenge these scumbags that are doing bad things to our country. That would be the thing to do. She's in the Congress. They could pass a law. So instead of saying, I can't believe we don't have but 4 computers, why don't you guys get together and pass a law to say you got to have 400, whatever, in a big room, a computer lab. Come on, man. This is the problem. I mean, she's like a nice lady, but she don't seem to have a whole bunch of fire in her belly. I want somebody in the Congress and the Senate that's just going to be down and dirty and just fight like hell for me.
for us to go look up information if the document even exists. Some of the documents you can't even find within the system. The internal memos talking about
Pass a
co-conspirators
law.
are unavailable to you. Some of the co-conspirator documents that are redacted online, if you can find them in the DOJ system, are redacted still. And the excuse is, well, this is how we received the data. There's no effort, none at all, to prosecute predators in the Epstein cases. And it's devastating, but it is important that we get that list out of potential co-conspirators. And I'm going to be putting out my own list of people that I want interviewed by the House Oversight Committee. I'm
Good.
not saying they did
Do it.
anything wrong or illegal, but what I am saying, I think they have information and answers that the American people want and the victims deserve.
I think they did something wrong and illegal. Stop being so diplomatic.
A lot of Americans
Give 'em the
across
business.
the political divide.
Call them out.
And they're not getting him. But let's start off with what I think that fundamental question that she asked right there, which is one I've been asking a lot. Where is the justice? If there were over 1,000 victims throughout all the different years here, then that means there must be a lot of perpetrators, people who did lots of evil things. And yet, I didn't have the soundbite here, but it was about a week or so ago, Todd Blanche comes out and says,
They're
there's
part of
nobody
a
else
secret
that's going to
blood
be
cult,
prosecuted.
man.
We don't have any evidence that anybody
That's
else
why they
did
do all
anything
these
wrong.
wars around the
So
world.
That's it. Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein.
That's why they do all these wars around the world, man, to spill blood to the dark gods. Okay, they make a lot of money selling bombs, bullets, guns. And then when the blood is actually spilled, it's like the ultimate ceremony. It's like the ultimate thing. I did an earlier video, very similar related content. It's the one with the swastika on the on the thumbnail. I didn't put that there because I'm a Nazi. I put it there to grab your attention, to maybe get you to click on it and watch it, because I was a cellmate of a stone cold Satanist United States soldier, Ethan Mauser. All right, he got 45 years in federal prison. I was a cellie in MDC Brooklyn for about 2.5, 3 months, and I had some conversation with the guy. I did a full video on it. This is a blood cult that thrives on the spilling of human blood, innocent blood and gore, making money off of human suffering and chaos. And the Zionists, they own big bomb, big plane, big bullet, big gun. Okay, the military-industrial complex. We were warned about that over 50 years ago. All right, by a sitting U.S. president on his way out of office. All right, so this is not a new thing, and our Supreme Court, prestigious of Supreme Court, said, yeah, sure, lobbyists can lobby politicians. I mean, a corporation's got a right to free speech, right? I mean, and these are supposed to be really smart, scholarly people. They didn't immediately see the problems for potential corruption before they issued that ruling? Or maybe is it they've been wined and dined and voting the way they get asked to vote too? Who knows? I don't trust none of them. Ain't none of them no good. Out of 100, maybe 10 are half-ass, and maybe 5 or 6 are stand up doing the right thing for the American people. In my opinion, 85, 90% are compromised to different degrees.
That's it. Case closed. Moving on.
Is Todd Blanche Dubois, less honorable than the character after A Streetcar Named Desire, who says it's not a crime to party with Epstein. One of the dumbest statements ever made by any deputy attorney general in American history. It's not a crime to party with Epstein. I mean, this is humiliating to the president of the United States and crushing him in the public opinion, in the court of public opinion. But Paper Plate Pam managed to top it all.
Paper Plate Pam
will go down as the most remembered quote of any attorney general in the United States history. Hey, why are we even talking about this?
The lady is no good. She sold her soul a long time ago.
50,000. So you get
she can put that little cross around her neck and look like a real prestigious white lady. That looks good, but she's a stone cold Satanist in her heart. I don't know if you have to worship Satan to do the Satan's bidding.
What you see is corruption.
You know what I mean?
This is what happens when your Justice Department turns into one open paper-play scheme where it's treated as a cash register.
She's doing Satan's bid. She is helping cover up, in my opinion, helping cover up the names of SA predators
that are trying to intimidate and terrorize the
real bad
influencer world as we speak.
Who need to be
put out there
under the jailhouse.
The people
or
allied
worse.
with her were telling major influencers on the right in the social media space that if you say anything negative about her handling the Epstein files, she will use the Justice Department to come after you. I was like, this is the most overt weaponization.
She probably will, and you know what a federal judge is going to do? Try his best to give you the max and try everything he can do or she can do to let them win and be a convict you and put you in jail. Federal judges, man, if you've never been in a federal courtroom, I'll do another episode on that later, but if you've never been in a federal courtroom, you don't know how just bad the whole system is, man.
Or at least the Biden administration pretended it wasn't political when everybody knew it was. Here, Pam Bondi is saying that overtly, saying her people and allies are saying that overtly. That's why she took out Gail Slater, was to show the world there will be no whistleblowers in her Justice Department. There'll be no reform. That's why Harmeet Dillon is, seal clapping like a nitwit for Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi's egregious handling of this. This is one of the biggest scandals in American history. Credit to Congressman Massey, who under all this pressure, the great history of Appalachia. Some of our greatest congressmen have come from the Appalachian region. They're people that constantly voted. The only congressman to vote
Bring your Appalachian love home to me,
was
girl.
a Republican from Eastern Kentucky, right in the same neck of the woods as Thomas Massey. The Todd Taft and other people who opposed NATO, who opposed their involvement in past wars, voted against other wars. Constantly, you'll find them over and over again tied to the Appalachian region. And they're an old region of independence who knows the stupidity of foolish wars. And that's the nature of the mountain folks dating back to their Scotch-Irish days. Kevin Phillips details in his book, Emerging Republican Majority. So the credit to him for getting this out there, because otherwise we wouldn't know the scale of it. But this is, if you want to understand how the global deep state operates, study the Epstein files. Because it is, whether it's Lord Mendelsohn giving a tip about what the policy is going to be so that Epstein's pals can help rig the market and get a bunch of cash, which George Soros has been doing for the better part of his entire political and economic career, manipulating currencies and economies to get rich, famously trying to sink the British pound. All of those examples are right there in the Epstein files. So I'm glad. I mean, this is the biggest scandal and the most explosive document since MK Ultra files and the assassination files under Frank Church's Select Committee on Intelligence back in the late 1970s. But this goes into even greater detail because there is so many crimes. You could find a crime a minute in the Epstein files.
They'll lock you up for jaywalking.
Someplace in those files.
That's the frustration, though, because this stuff just as a layperson,
they let the baby eaters
came to that same conclusion. And yet,
run the government.
If
not only not go to jail,
and Bondi aren't
run the government, run the world effectively.
Prosecute anyone. What chance do we have? If whether it's Thomas Massey, whether it's
sad, pathetic,
Green,
but that's
who
the state of affairs.
Basically lost her seat because of all this stuff, and said she was going to put out these names for justice, and yet where is any justice? Is it going to come?
Either Trump's going to reverse course, or it's going to be a successor administration. Democrats are already running on that Trump is the Epstein administration.
We need to vote a whole bunch of independents in there. My number one thing is that you do what you went there to do, which was represent the American people, not buy and sell your soul to some foreign entity, lobbyist, okay, and sell your own people and your own country down the drain. A lot of those people in Washington, D.C., my friend, they are traitors. All right? They are not good people. They've been selling our country out for decades. Just not good people. So bad actors in our deep state. They got no problem spending the life of your loved ones or your children, putting them in uniform, sending them over there and letting them be cannon fodder. All right? They got no problem with that. But they're not going to ask their precious children to do it. Oh, no, Barron, he's way too precious to have him on the front line fighting some old mean Iranians, but they'll surely potentially ask and or order your children to go do it. All right? Now, you can feel however you want to feel about any politics you feel about. Hey, I ain't here to tell you right or wrong, but I think you should at least know the truth, man. be informed. And that's what really this show is all about. Doing deep dives on all kind of topics. And really, when I talk about jail, I try to coincide it with how that principle, how that teaching could be applied to any given real world situation. So I don't want this show to be just a lowbrow, oh, I saw a huge fight in jail over the phone, or a guy owed a guy a honey bun or a crackhead suit and got beat up by a lock in a sock. Well, I could tell those stories too because I have like thousands of them that I personally witnessed, and of course we will do story time, and that's the main focus of this channel. But I want it to be a little broader than that. I'm also an avid outdoorsman and a backpacker, a hiker, an urban camper, all kind of different interests, an artist, a musician. So yeah, the primary focus of the show is going to be prison-related topics, but occasionally I might vary it a little bit. I hope you'll be patient, and I hope you like the content. If you do, give me a thumbs up, and think about subscribing. That's a pretty cheap price for all this cool entertainment, man. So a like and a subscribe. Anyway, man, stay up. Thanks for watching. I'm going to cut this, get it in the wind. This is Colonel Douglas Davis. The name of his show is Deep Dive. All right, does an excellent show. Watch him quite often. He's a military man. I don't always agree with him, but I think he brings a whole lot of deep thought topics to bear. Anytime, stay up. Peace.